what is lean management? There's many different ways of thinking about it and understanding it. You'll see many different descriptions if you go and do a Google search. And really by teaching and practicing lean for many, many years, I really feel the easiest way to understand it for somebody coming in new is to think of lean as just a certain way of doing regular management functions or practices. So for example, everybody in a business has to organize their workplace, right? So there's a lean way of doing it. The lean way to do that is to make great use of visual methods. And you'll see a lot from Andrew and hear from him about how he uses visual methods at City Furniture. But the idea is to use visual methods to make all things transparent. And I'll get into why that is. Each one of these then, organizing a workplace by using visual methods, there are specific lean techniques that show you exactly how to do that. So for example, to organize your workplace, there's the 5S organizing method, and there's visual controls. And we'll touch on those a little bit tonight. So that's kind of how this is organized. So each of these 4 practices have kind of a lean way of doing things. So managing everyday work, there's a lean way of doing that. We'll cover it tonight. There's a lean way of solving problems, and there's a lean way of motivating employees. All of these are built, though, on kind of the 2 big ideas of lean, which is continuous improvement and respect for people. And continuous improvement basically means trying to get a little bit better every day. And respect for people means respecting your employees by fully engaging them, not just engaging their hands, but engaging their minds in a respectful way and in a way that ends up building trust in the workplace. Now, the thing is, these ideas, continuous improvement and respect for people, are not actually your father's management method. These are not consistent with the traditional ways. And I would argue that, other than in high tech, this is not the way that most large corporations are run. And I would also argue that this way of doing business, not continuous improvement, but more like directing and controlling and traditional management, is not working well anymore, especially, with the way the pandemic has changed the playing field. So companies and people like Andrew have recognized that, these old ways of managing are just not functional in today's world. And so they're recognizing that continuous improvement, respect for people, like in this lean way, is really the way of the future. So here's the schedule for tonight. We'll start off. Andrew's gonna jump in and talk about his lean journey at City Furniture and so forth. I'll talk some about my lean journey to get to this point. But then we're gonna walk through each of the 4 practices, looking at, I'll briefly cover it. I mean, I certainly don't have time to go into detail on all of these. There are recordings on all of these that I'll post to the chat at the end of this session. But we'll go through mainly to see how Andrew does it. And then when we get to this last one of motivating employees, I will talk in a little more detail about the Gemba walk, which is kind of the main technique for motivating employees. But really all of these are going to act to motivate employees. Then we'll finish up by some thoughts about, why and how you might want to get into lean management in your own company. So that's pretty much it. Andrew, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. And again, thank you so much for all your help and for you being here, and let you talk about, your lean journey and City Furniture and CFOS.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Hinds, for having me. Hey, everybody. I am here to share a little bit about our journey implementing lean at City. So you can see some pictures here. Quick story, my father and my uncle, 1971, couple of hippies, started our company, Waterbed City, at the time. And really to start smart entrepreneurs that grew a business from like a 400 or 500 square foot store here in Fort Lauderdale. That did everything. They built the beds, they sold them, they delivered them, they made them, you name it. And So throughout the 70s, had some good success, kept adding stores throughout South Florida, adding more waterbed stores throughout the 80s. I think, maybe by, early 1990s, we were about a $40 million business. Pretty amazing for a couple of really, a couple of hippies, but these two guys were really, really smart. And my dad was the guy on the left there with the mustache. He was the marketing sales guy. My uncle on the right was the ops technology guy. I would say he's probably more of the lean guy. But so it's kind of cool growing up in our business and realizing what my uncle was specialized in. We had a similar kind of mindset on things. So long story short, early 90s, waterbeds, what do you know, not so cool. Turned into City Furniture, and across the two stores to the right and left was the #1 store in the United States, and the other one was Rooms to Go, which was a really well-funded furniture startup at the time. And I'm really proud to say, you fast forward to now, we're the #1 home furnishings retailer in South Florida, Central Florida, about to be Central Florida. We have, but in our markets, we're #1, working on our expansion into Tampa. So City, as of right now, is about 3,300 associates, and last year I think we were one of the fastest furniture retailers in the U.S. Growth-wise. And the reason why I say,
Andrew, quick point.
yeah,
Christina has chimed in that she was one of the original customers of a waterbed.
that's awesome.
She was on the call this evening, and she says it still works.
That's awesome. Yeah, we still swear by them. But the story with lean is in 2003, I'm in college, and I read a book called The Machine That Changed the World. And essentially it teaches you a lot about the difference between Toyota and a lot of the American manufacturing companies. And I kept learning more and more about Toyota and just some of the things, like how did this company in Japan, this small little island in Japan, essentially become the world's #1 automobile manufacturer, most productive, best quality, best associate satisfaction, you name it, in a country that essentially has no resources. They had to, get their resources all across the world to even build the car, but yet they could build it faster, quicker, better quality, and a lower price. And I think we all know about the Toyota or Japanese really dominating the automobile market in the 80s and 90s. And really, the American car manufacturers were like, where did this company come from? And so I really explored and read a lot of books on Toyota in 2003. And then I asked my father to send me to Japan for a spring break, spent about a week over there. And everything that I read, I got to see with my own eyes. And it truly was an amazing culture of continuous improvement where everybody, like Dr. Hinds was talking about, where everybody was trying to continuously improve. I don't care if you're the janitor, the admin at the front door, the manufacturer, the associate, putting the car together on the production line. Everybody was equal. Everybody was all in it to make a better car, make a better product, take care of each other. It's just an amazing culture. And there's a lot of principles that I learned that we might share tonight that were actually opposite of what my father and even my uncle were teaching me growing up as a kid. So, I come back from Japan and I'm trying to explain to Keith, my father, that, the way we're running our business is wrong. And we're top down and we're not listening to the voice of the associates, and we need to get more people involved in continuous improvement. All the ideas can't come from the senior management team, and we need to give up autonomy to the folks doing the work. Again, these will be concepts we talk about. But it wasn't until 2007 when the Great Recession was poking its head out, so it took me about 4 years to convince my father. And at that time, we were about a $320 million company. So imagine some young kid from college telling his dad, who's running a very successful business, that the way he's running his business is it needs to be adjusted tremendously, transformed tremendously, or else we're not going to be able to sustain our success. And so he was very humble. He always read the books, But it really wasn't until that recession we was like, all right, let's go on this lean journey. Let's really try to, get everybody engaged in our company to solve problems, reduce waste, improve safety, improve quality, improve customer satisfaction as a team. So some of these pictures are here. You can see us huddling together to solve problems. You can see a picture of the bottom left. That's actually one of our very first Kaizens team that had I think a 1,000% productivity increase. Essentially, we really have been on a lean journey since 2007 of just pure continuous improvement. Fast forward the last 15 years, I'm happy to say we actually, we got through the Great Recession. We actually acquired more real estate. We even got through COVID 2 years ago. And I had been working my entire life to prepare for a Great Recession, another one, because I went through the one in 2008 early in my work career. So we've been on this lean journey preparing for the next, what's going to happen, some type of recession. And we were well prepared for COVID. And I'm happy to say we were one of the fastest growing retailers last year. And we are actually one of the fastest growing retailers in 2019 prior to COVID. And in 2020, during such an amazingly difficult time, we had 0 layoffs. We actually paid out 100% profit sharing to every single associate, 20% written growth, just amazing numbers. And if you ask me, if people ask me like, why do you think you're so successful, or why are you, continuing to get success? And I would say it's because of lean, and 100%. And so I'm proud to share a little bit more about what we do with our lean, but and we actually call it our City Furniture Operating System, and which is this visual right here. And Dr. Hinds, do I have a little bit more time to explain this, or?
Absolutely. No, go. You got plenty of time.
Okay. So about 5 years into our journey, so 2007 to 2012, we decided that we needed to teach everybody in our company what is lean to City. This is just our visual, and there's a lot of different ways to put this down on paper, and but at the heart of it is continuous improvement. And we really work hard at creating a culture where we have strong standards, strong visuals. We're really balancing workload, what we call level production. I'm sure everybody's heard the concepts of just-in-time thinking. We apply just-in-time thinking, whether it's in our receiving department, our delivery department, our sales department, our administrative department, our accounting department. We're constantly trying to flow work, minimize that inventory, respond to the customer and satisfy that demand, whatever they want, whether it's an IT ticket request, whether it's a payroll request. We're really trying to satisfy that demand. And that's the whole philosophy of just-in-time. Built-in quality is having the mindset of everybody in your company of never passing on a defect to their internal customer or the actual external customer. So at City Furniture, we're one of the very few furniture retailers out there where we actually inspect every single piece of furniture before we put it on the truck to take you to home for delivery. We're humans, okay? If anybody's a customer here, we might have made a mistake, but we really work hard to prevent defects to not only to our external customer, but also we have the same mindset inside our business to make sure that nobody gives an IT request that shouldn't have, or nobody passes on work to each other that might cause rework, or a phone call, hey, I didn't understand, what do I need to do here, or hey, I'm missing this information. So this mindset of preventing defects is huge in our business, and you can't have just speed of just in time without quality. You had to have both. So inside this house, we have this mindset of people and teamwork and problem solving. And in short, everybody, the way I like to think about this is, especially in my CEO role as a servant leader to our associates, I want to do the best I possibly can to serve our people, to provide the absolute greatest development opportunities, cross training, recognition, rewards, benefit, any development they may need, coaching to make them better, more valuable, happier, rewarded, financially rewarded, good benefits, you name it. To me, this is all about really taking great care of our associates. And in return, and all of our associates know this about me, is What do I want in return? I want brain power. I want them to solve problems every day. It could be problems I've caused. It could be problems that have just come out of our system. Doesn't matter, but we need everybody in our business 100% engaged, giving suggestions, identifying problems, participating in city circles, Kaizens, projects, you name it. We have tons of methods of where we give our associates opportunities to improve the work that they do or improve any aspect of our business. One of my favorite ones right now is having our sales associates refer to our merchants better products that we should be providing for our customers. Who knows it better than our sales associates that work with our customers? So anyways, we're real big into creating a culture of problem solving. And if we have a good culture of people teamwork, good culture of problem solving, we think we'll continuously improve and get better at achieving our ideal perfection goals of safety, quality, customer performance, and teamwork. So this visual.
You mentioned the other day, you mentioned the other day about one of the best suggestions that you had from one of your associates about the lighting.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I was sharing with Rich. He asked, like, give me an example of one of the suggestions you've had, and anybody can make a suggestion on anything. Long story short, this associate saw that I was about to sign a contract for $100,000 for new lighting in our yard that was a little bit too dark and unsafe for our drivers driving late at night. And he suggested just flip around the lights, every other light that was shining on our building into the yard, and that should be sufficient to light our yard. And he was 100% right. And I almost signed a $100,000 bill, and this guy gave me an idea that was so simple, easy, quick, doable. And so that's one of many hundreds of genius ideas that where senior management thinks they know everything, right? And we here's what we're going to do. And the associate, and this was just a starting level associate position with us, gave us a genius idea that saved us enormous amounts of dough. So that happens all the time, Rich, and everybody. And we really push hard on our culture to give us ideas to just make us better, because nobody can see it all. I don't care how great of a leader or CEO you are. Nobody can see it all. And the suggestion system is super powerful to really, helping you achieve these goals. So.
All right. Awesome. That was a great introduction. We covered so much ground there. So, all right. Well, thank you, Andrew. So let me talk a little bit about kind of my lean journey and sort of the role that I'm going to play tonight, and the role that I play in, teaching and advising on lean. And my lean journey started actually earlier, back in 1988, when my wife Brenda and I bought the assets of a failed small business. It was called Trend Distributors. And Trend was a wholesaler of cabinet and furniture hardware. These are some of our catalogs here. These are knobs, pulls, hinges, drawer slides, all kind of hardware items that go into kitchen cabinets and furniture. And we sold to cabinet makers, furniture manufacturers. And after we bought the assets to the company, we hired back a few people, a few former employees, kind of got it stabilized, and then began the process of trying to figure out how to run this thing and begin to grow it. And early on, I started hearing from some of my suppliers who were manufacturers, and also a few other distributors who were using, well, they said, these are some new management methods we're using, and some were called Kaizen, and some were called total quality management. And but interesting enough, they all had those same two fundamental ideas behind them that you now see with lean, which is continuous improvement and respect for people to get everybody engaged. It sounded good. We said, all right, let's do it. And, we really began truly trying to get a little better every day. I'd literally come in every day and walk around and say, hey, how are we better today? What can we do? And we truly did respect people by looking for their ideas. We realized we didn't have all the answers. And so everybody was really part of that. And as we continued to get some really amazing suggestions from people, just like Andrew has said, if you're open to it and realize just how valuable these suggestions can be, it's amazing what you get. And so we did get better and better. Trust built So over time, it takes time, but we really built some very good trusting relationships between and among employees as we started hiring managers and so forth. And this all worked out incredibly well. You can see down here in the lower right, this was our history over 10 years of sales. We grew to just about 10 million in sales after the 10th year. We had, at that point, 60 employees, 3 locations. And along the way, especially towards the end, we were consistently at the top of the industry when it came to profitability, when it came to service levels like fill rates, and also when it came to cash flow measures like collections. And because we were good at that, we basically were able to not only buy the buildings we were in, but also self-fund this growth, including a very heavy inventory. You can see some of the shelving here and so forth in our warehouses. So this was the original trend. We started in Hallandale in a couple of bays, and then ended up in a, very nice distribution center here in Fort Lauderdale, as well as 2 other locations in Miami and in Tampa. And so everything went very well. 10 years into it, we got an offer we couldn't refuse from a large German company, and we actually sold the business. And to make a long story short, I went back to school, got a PhD, and I joined full-time the faculty at Nova Southeastern University. I was in decision sciences and entrepreneurship. And one of the courses I really loved was teaching what we called entrepreneurial management. And in the process of doing it, I said, you know what, we really need to redesign this, which I did. I redesigned the course completely. It was part of the MBA program. Redesigned it completely to reflect the principles and practices of lean management. And the reason I did it, because I recognized how valuable lean was to how well we did as a small business. It turned out into, growing into a larger, more mid-sized business. And it also actually was a really good comprehensive way that if you understand lean management, you understand really most of the key elements of what it takes to manage an entrepreneurial venture. So, so having done that, though, there was a problem. And the problem was that most of my students had never heard of lean, and most of them were having a hard time grasping lean. What did this really mean? Because most of the students were in service industries, not in manufacturing, and they were part of often small or mid-sized businesses. And it turns out that a lot of the literature, and including the books that Andrew was talking about, are really geared to larger corporations, the type of company that can afford to have, departments of process improvement people and so forth. Plus, there's a lot of manufacturing jargon in there, and a lot of that can be difficult to transfer. It's not as bad in a wholesale or retail business like City Furniture, but it can be really tough for somebody who has a law firm or a small spa or any kind of pure service business. It's really hard to understand. So I worked very hard to come up with a good way of explaining lean to somebody in the smaller type of business, especially in services. I worked with many lean organizations. And of course, top of that list was Andrew and his father, Keith, were incredible partners. I was so fortunate to meet them early on. I think it's been now about 12 years, Andrew, since we've known each other. And they were fairly early in their lean journey at the time. So I've had the benefit of watching them grow and transform. And it's absolutely incredible. I'd go out there every few months, 3 months, 6 months, and it seemed like it was a totally different place every time I went. And the great thing was that I was able to take my students there, and Andrew and Keith early on, but Andrew most of the time was actually helping to teach the students and show them, and it was so valuable for them because, and I think some of the students are probably on the call right now. It was so valuable for them to see that, lean is not just this theory or some kind of passing fad. It's something that really works. And it can have incredible impact on your business, and they just saw it firsthand. Just like when Andrew, when you went to Toyota, my students can come you and really see it in a service business right here in our backyard. So, so that all, you know, having done that, so I ended up teaching hundreds and hundreds of students, supervised almost 200 lean projects, and all the time trying to refine and improve the way that I present lean and the way that I teach it. And that led to my book, which was called The Essence of Lean, and also to this 4-part webinar that we're just finishing tonight, which again, my role is to really try to make this understandable and accessible to people that don't know anything about lean. You know, with Andrew, you have a great opportunity to see a mature, large corporation and how, you know, how they make lean work. And what I'm going to try to do is we're going to go through each of those 4 practices and kind of, I'll give a little brief review for, you know, introduction for what the practice is. And then we'll go into some of the specifics. We got some good slides that Andrew's people were able to give me to explain what he does. So, all right. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So the first of the 4 practices is organizing a workplace. As I said earlier, what is the lean way to organize your workplace? Well, it's all about visual. It's about visual methods to make all things transparent. And why do we do that? You know, when things are very visible, very clear, it's much easier to work. Problems can be found more quickly. It's safer to work. And especially, remember, we're trying to engage all of our people in not only maintaining the quality, but improving it. And you have to feed back information. And that's what these visuals do. They feed information back. Now, the 2 lean techniques that relate to this way of organizing a workplace are 5S organizing and visual controls. 5S organizing is a kind of a step-by-step. This is how you organize a workplace to make it go from something like this to something like this. And again, we don't have time tonight to dig into all the details of this. I will be posting at the end here the link to the recording. So for example, there's a lot more detail in this in one of the earlier webinars in the series. But this is something that's often done at the very beginning of when somebody, you know, a company starts to get into lean. The other technique is visual controls, and we'll look at a lot of Andrew's controls here in a minute. These are all different kind of devices. Oops, I'm sorry. Devices that help you find things, help you know how to do things, can cue you to action when you need to do something, when you need to order something, for example. You can see displays about what's actually happening right now in real time, and you can see reports that track prior performance. And I just want to note, you know, typically this has been done in kind of the physical world, right? All kind of markings, floor markings, shadow boxes, all types of things. But more and more, we're doing our work online, right? We're doing our work in SharePoint and those type of online platforms. And you can organize, and you need to organize those in just the same way. So in the webinar, I go into more detail on that. So
David,
yeah,
or Andrew, is there a team? Is there a visual control team that's responsible for signage and you know, all ideas have to pass through them, or how do those things come about?
Here, Andrew, here's your first screen. So yeah, why don't you talk about generally how you use visual controls and so forth at City?
Yeah, so originally on that visual of the house that I referred to, visual controls is very critical. So the people doing the work or the leaders in that area of the work own the responsibility of what visuals they need to help manage their department. So that could be as if they need signage to keep them safe, if they need signage to visualize performance in the department, if we're trying to visualize our problem solving efforts, it could be essentially everything. So sometimes I get the question is how many visuals is too much or too little? And I always say, you know, it's for the people that are doing the work. They need to determine what is or isn't necessary. Now, sometimes, you know, there's also leaders that are need to understand what's going on in the department from a higher level, a director level view, or you name it, or maybe there's an other department that's works with this department that they need to see certain visuals. So honestly, we trust and give authority to the team to determine what those visuals are. And we get a lot of good ideas through our suggestion system for having the right visuals in the department. And are there dedicated teams this? No, it's the people in that area that really predominantly do the work.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so here's an example of kind of a display wall. There's the CFOS diagram, and interesting diversity, equity, interesting stuff here. What can you talk a little bit about the kinds of information that you could find on the walls of city furniture like this?
So we have our strategic plan goals and strategies visualized. We have our departmental goals and problem solving efforts strategized. We have recognition. You know, here is an example of some human resource communication that's important. So honestly, you know, David, it's anything that is important to the people in the area doing the work, or the cross-functional departments that might have some impact on that department or flow through that department, or it could be just, a hallway that, associates are walking by, and we might have huge amounts of information on our suggestion system or how they can sign up for our community events. We have some very standardized stuff. So it's very critical for me that all of our associates in our company understand our goals, that they understand our big strategic plan goals, that there's whatever is necessary for human resource to communicate in regards to our health insurance or benefits, or there's individual KPI performance that we post and make public. We make departmental performance. Man, we make a lot of things visualized. So I guess what I would add, folks, in your companies, if you see a lot of waste of communication, questions, I'm always getting the same question every month on something. That might be an opportunity to consider posting a visual. If there's a safety issue, there's a quality issue, these visuals reinforce standard work, the behaviors you expect. So that house visual, we have those planted all throughout our corporate offices, our warehouses, showroom. That just a reminder to leadership, don't forget how we want to work together here at City. So, man, that's a loaded question.
A lot of stuff, but and it's interesting because and we're going to see some other examples where you have computer monitors with the displays, but a lot of it's just on the walls, right? And it's always interesting. The first time I walk into a business, I can immediately tell if they understand visual controls, because you look on their walls and a lot of it is either blank or, all right, they got some nice artwork, but walls are just such a valuable resource because, like you say, we walk down the hall all the time. Why not put something on the wall that's going to feed back some information?
Yeah, that's a good one. Sometimes, we used in our company, like sales didn't know what marketing was doing. Marketing didn't know what merchandising was doing. So we use our visual management system to say, hey, their problem solving, their goals, their information is go posted. You now go take the time and energy to go walk over there and fully grasp, wow, they are really working on the right things. Wow, they are working on how to grow sales for me as a sales associate, whatever it is. So we really visualize it so everybody knows. I'm not going to say that every leader knows what every other leader is working on, but if they wanted to go see, they could. And what I like about that is that drives confidence that I'm solving problems in my department. Man, that department over there is also working for me too.
Yeah, and that's that keyword trust again. And we'll get back to that, but that's what it is. Here was another one. I know it's a little hard to see, but I thought it was interesting that these are like handwritten. And I'm curious how does that fit in? Does this allow them? Why do you do that?
So we got the monthly stuff, we got the weekly stuff, but this is also the daily stuff. So we have a lot of boards throughout our facilities where we handwrite in yesterday's goal versus actual performance. So our goal was X% damages, and we had XYZ% damages, and all of that's just to continuously drive problem solving. Hey, whoa, our goal's here, it was above, ask why, or do those, drill into that root cause problem solving. And a lot of these visuals is really just to identify the gap or the problem so that someone can come up with an idea to fix it.
Yeah. I've always felt, handwriting is you think, oh, why don't we automate it? But there's a lot of advantages to handwriting. Like you say, whoever's writing it in, you're now, you just wrote in the next hour and you glance back and say, wait a minute now, something dropped off from last hour. What happened there? It lets you, in a very immediate sense, have a better sense of what's actually happening. So yeah, so it doesn't have to look always perfectly printed. I mean, as long as it accomplishes the goals and the functions like you talked about, it really works. I notice you have timer clocks. Can you talk a little bit about how you use those?
Yeah, sometimes we have goals that are expectations to serve our customers or internal customers, and we're trying to measure our ability to satisfy that demand. In this case, we're trying to satisfy our customer pickup demand, within 10 minutes or less.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Or we actually have these for our drivers. So when they come back to the warehouse, we want to make sure we're getting them in and out of the warehouse so they can go home to their families.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever time's important, we measure it. If we miss it, no big deal, but just ask why and try to find a problem, try to get an idea from the team what we can do better to improve for tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then the last,
I would,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would, yeah, I think you can go to the next slide. I think it relates to it. So if I said, if we can measure things, our on-time performance on a monthly basis, but if you drill it down to the hour or as real time as you possibly can get, what happens is you find more problems. Sometimes I get some our associates saying, well, let's just measure that, for the day or the week or the month. But I always teach them, you want to get that incremental time to measure down to 15 minutes, down to real time as much as possible, because when you miss the goal, that's the gold. When you miss that goal, you're going to find a great idea. Like, what just happened in the last 10 minutes?
Right.
That problem happened, that problem. When I say, David, what happened yesterday? Right. Your mind's going to be like, I don't really remember what happened yesterday. But if I say, what happened in the last hour in the recruiting department, this is a recruiting visual where we measure our hires per hour, they're going to say, well, David, in the last hour, I got pinged by sales because they weren't sure about this open rec, and I got you emailed me 10 times about this, hire, and I got distracted because of this, and the system didn't upload. You're going to find a lot more problems. So we're always trying to measure our goals to the shortest period of time as possible so we can identify problems, not to get anybody in trouble. It's never about that. It's always about problem solving.
Right. Yeah, great point.
Yeah.
So, all right, so that was the first practice. That's all about organizing your workplace visually. So the second practice now we're going to cover and we've already made reference to some of this, but this is basically, how do you manage your everyday work? Not special projects, but the things you do every day, kind of the work processes. And the lean way of doing that is by standardizing the current best way of performing the work, which involves two techniques at a minimum, which would be the standard work, and I'll talk briefly about that. And then also, as Andrew's talked a bit about, the idea of the meetings, and especially stand-up meetings, a special kind of meeting in which you can reinforce standard work, even come up with improvements and ideas for improvement, as well as basically acting, I feel, kind of like the heartbeat of the organization. It's where you really get everybody together, and it's really helping to build this whole team idea. So in terms of standard work, the idea is that you basically document the current best way of doing certain things, certain processes, for example. I don't like the term best practice because I think in many respects it's a myth. I mean, but many companies seek that out. Can we get this best practice and then we're going to do it forever? But in reality, things change all the time. New people come in, new challenges, new technologies. So that's really not practical. And the way lean works is really to capture, the current best way, which does two things. One, it does get everybody on the same page, so we're not kind of sliding back down and regressing. But it's also a challenge to everybody to, hey, what can we do to make it better? You know, so that's the idea of, once you establish a standard work guide, then you can revise it, basically kind of rolling yourself up the improvement hill, as you see on this little diagram here, and then you kind of put the block in to hold it there until you can move up again. So that's the idea of standard work. Here's a couple of examples. This is more like a bullet point. This is for actually handling support tickets in an IT environment. Here's one of City Furniture's, just a simple but very effective, you know, visual, again, a visual control, but as a standard work to say, this is what you need to do. You know, you need to be checking for these blankets based on the colors. If it's replenished, you need to replenish it based on where the color is, and then you do it. You know, so simple, but very important. I mean, I'm sure if you run out of these blankets and have to spend 20, 30 minutes running around to find more, it's, you know, why hold up the whole operation? So this is the idea of standard work, simple. And it is, as Andrew alluded to earlier, it's not just for the people that do the work, it's for everybody to understand what everybody else does. So it helps to coordination. It helps for appreciating what other people do. Oh, gee, I didn't know you did all, really? Is that what you do? Okay, you know, and then maybe you can coordinate better. So that's standard work. And then the stand-up meetings are typically, you know, every day if you can do it, and that's the way to do it. Short meetings, though, that's why you're standing up. You want to have short meetings. Here's an example of one of the physical meetings going back prior to the pandemic. I know during the pandemic, you guys did a lot of Zoom-based meetings, but so Andrew, if you could talk a little bit about kind of standard work and how your stand-up meetings, you know, relate to that. And also, I'm sure we'd be curious about your experiences with using Zoom for these meetings. How is that working? Is it good, or what problems you might be having in getting over that?
Yeah, so our stand-up meetings are pretty much daily, every day. And what we're doing is we're reviewing the goals of the department or process, depending on what type of stand-up meeting it is. And then we're measuring the actual performance. And if we're missing the target, that means there's a problem. And then we say, okay, do we have a problem? Do we need to assign someone to fix that problem? Usually we assign ownership to, like, you know, Frank's going to solve XYZ problem for XYZ thing. And people volunteer to help and solve those problems. So it shows a lot of teamwork. And you know, you're very efficient. You're on time. You get in, you get out. Any departmental updates, any other communication that needs to happen, standard work changes, you name it. And it's all about creating a culture of teamwork, mutual trust and respect. You know, I'm trying to take a problem that I can help solve for them, and they're trying to solve a problem for my department, and it's just phenomenal teamwork. And in this whole world of Zoom, we're just trying to figure it out how to do it virtually as well as physically. So see that picture at the top left? That was the old days. The bottom is, you know, when we're all when we're all working from home. Now the blend is both. So you got some digital TVs, usually, and physical standing, depending on what department it is. And it's literally just a blend of both. We're not perfect. We're trying to figure it out too. But what we definitely are sticking to the same beat of the drum, which is identify problems, assign owners, solve problems, you know, show teamwork, you know, get better every day. So nothing's changed there.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Andrew, do they have to stand during the Zoom meeting?
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Okay.
Yeah. I've had some businesses say, you know, well, if we can't do it in person, you know, we're going to just cut back to once a week on the Zoom. But I think the daily is so important. I mean, just to keep it going and keep that beat going. A lot of companies say, how can you afford everybody meeting every day? And aren't these meetings out of control? But I mean, I know, you know, Paul Akers, another fanatic about lean, says, how can you afford not to? It's too important, right? So, okay, all right, great. So that was the second of the practices. Here's the third one. Okay, solving problems. What is the lean way to solve problems? Again, I'm trying to make this as simple as possible for somebody who's just coming in new. With Andrew, you're seeing an advanced, existing business. But so what's the lean way to solve problems? Well, the lean way is to, again, engage all employees in finding and eliminating waste. And so we'll talk a little bit about what waste is. Waste is something that was really very unique to Toyota. It was their way of identifying in a very, I think, elegant way of what are the things that your employees should look for and recognize as problems that need to be addressed. And we'll also get into the idea of suggestion systems, and we'll see in more detail of how City Furniture handles that with a couple of different ways. So in terms of waste, typically you see 7 or 8 types of waste. I think Toyota originally came out with 7, and you'll see different versions of it. But again, my role is to try to make this as understandable as possible for somebody coming in the first time. Maybe you have a small business. And what I've found is actually these 4 categories really cover the waterfront. This is great to get started if you're in a very heavy material oriented kind of business, like retail, wholesale, or even manufacturing. Materials can break out into inventory, and there's other 7 or 8 ways. But for many businesses, you can start out by just recognizing these are the 4 things to look out for. These are the things you want to try to minimize in order to improve your processes, improve and solve problems. Rather than waiting till something becomes a huge problem and needs a big fix, you try to do this a little at a time. So you're always looking for defects. I know, Andrew, you've talked about that. Any kind of a problem, error, mistake. Waiting basically has to do with responsiveness. Are you waiting longer than you really need to serve the customer? And by customer, we mean, outside customer, it can be inside customer. I mean, much of what you talked about is, one department dealing with another. And one of the great things I think about, looking at other departments and employees as internal customers is, boy, that really starts to build up, respect and trust, that, hey, look, I want to understand you, and I don't want to try to meet your needs. So waiting longer than really is necessary to serve the customer, that's a waste. Effort, putting in more effort than you need to serve the customer, that's a waste. And then materials, either acquiring, holding, or using more material necessary to serve the customer. So again, there's a lot more detail on this in the prior webinar that I'll be putting the recording up towards the end here. But that's kind of the overview of waste and how the way you try to eliminate it generally is through small experiments. It's a trial and error. Try things. A lot of Lean's philosophy is just do it. Don't spend months and months in a room planning it. Just do it. Now, there are some times when you do, of course, need to spend some time in planning and so forth. But as far as what's happening out on the field floor and the employees, and it's just like Andrew's been saying, once you want this stuff to happen all the time and right away. And so you're basically, if you see waste, you try to imagine what's a better way to do this. And you can maybe try it, or you can even what if it, even kind of a thought experiment to say, what if I did that? And you can talk about it and brainstorm and evaluate it and say, all right, maybe we should try it, or yeah, maybe we shouldn't. But so that's the basic idea of this is how you solve problems in Lean. It doesn't mean you don't do the big projects. You have to do those, but that's not the end of the story of solving problems. You need to overlay your projects and your IT projects and all that with this continuous improvement, continuously solving problems. So Andrew, you talked a little bit about your suggestion system. So here we've got a couple of suggestions here and some of the data that you capture. So you can talk a little bit more about, how you do the suggestions, how you reward them, how you track them, and so forth.
Yeah, it's very simple. We have cards out in the department, or electronic cards if we're virtual, and the associate can either fill it out and bring it to a manager to get it approved, or the manager working with the associate, just talking about problems, you know, in the daily meeting or walking the floor, interacting with the associates, trying to pull problems out of them. What are you seeing? How can I help? What ideas you got? So, and then the manager could fill it out. So it's either way. Sometimes associates feel comfortable doing it. Sometimes they don't. Either way, that card's going to get filled out. The manager is going to say, that's a great idea. I'd love to support that. I'm signing this. He's going to approve it or she's going to approve it immediately. We're going to go get a gift card and say, hey, we're going to go test that idea and or implement that idea. And then, you know, essentially what you're seeing here is a slide of every month we review some of our top ideas in every single department. We do a monthly meeting. And sometimes it's during lunch, sometimes it's, you know, end of the day, you name it. And what we're doing is we're sharing amongst all the leaders throughout the departments, different ideas that are happening and being implemented throughout the company, because that also turns on light bulbs. How do they improve their area? Share, you know, ideas that are working really well. You name it. We reward ideas that are quick, easy, simple, implemented, versus the very difficult. I want a robot that costs $10,000 and will save, you know, $20,000 a year. So, but this is just one of our way to visualize ideas, you know, and get the momentum going.
Yeah, and I thought it's, you know, interesting. This is a simple idea, but you know, it's a good idea. This, you know, create a secure space for these spray guns. And then here was another one, a little more involved. I guess you do sales training, and in order to, there's exams, and what this woman came up with a great idea of improving the grading of it. It looks like saving 180 hours a year, 6,000 in savings, right?
We see this all the time.
Awesome.
All the different times.
Awesome.
And just, you know, all this concepts in the warehouse, in the sales department, in the corporate office, it's the same thing. You know, it's different problems, but I actually see a lot more suggestions implemented in the corporate office where, you know, sometimes it's harder when your drivers, you have 400 or 500 drivers that leave the facility all the time to really engage with them. But
yeah, that's a great point. Right. And I know you track it. So you said normally you run, this was, I get this sheet behind there is only like the first month or so of the year where you're tracking all these and tracking how many suggestions per employee and all that.
Yeah, so our goal for the whole company is, you know, about 2.5 suggestions per associate. In our corporate offices, we might be near, you know, 10, 11, 12 ideas implemented per year. Yeah, so you know, I think national statistics, you know, the average company is about 0.3 or 0.4 suggestions per associate. So, you know, we have work to do. We think we can get this to a lot better, but we're proud of where we're at.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We want the whole company to feel ideas. We tell our new hires when they join the company, they got 30 days to, you know, put in their first idea. I give them my cell phone number and say, in 30 days, I make them pinky promise me, give me a suggestion, give me a problem, give me feedback, meaning let's start talking to each other. Let's not make this some corporate stuffy work environment where I'm afraid to speak to my bosses or whatever. There's, you know, we all have titles, but like we shouldn't treat each other with titles. You got an idea, you should feel comfortable giving it.
You mentioned the other day about the reward system for ideas and employees.
Yeah, we will give, if you come up with a good idea, we'll literally same day give you a gift card that day. It could be $5, $10. I think our max is 25. I think we're about to raise it to 50. But we essentially want to approve your idea as fast as possible and then give you a gift card to say thank you so much. Some people don't think that's appropriate. I actually learned, we all learned that from Wells Fargo, a portion of their company. And what it does, it just gives, wow, you really believe in my idea that much, you're going to reward me right there on the spot. I'm like, yeah, I think that's a great idea. I can't wait. Thank you. Now I want your second idea, you know, as quickly as possible. And that just gets more people in the game. It just gets more people in the game caring about improving their work, their peers' work, their you know, the work of the business. And that's what you want. You'll have a continuous improvement culture if everybody's giving ideas.
You mentioned something about quarterly and annual recognition.
Oh yeah. We have all types of rewards, monthly bonus or monthly prizes, monthly contests, quarterly contests. Our big one that everybody works towards is the annual one, where the more ideas you put in, you can win a trip to like Jamaica. I think we sent someone to Italy for a week or 5 days, something like that. We give you spending cash. So it's a big deal. And the cool thing is, we not only we do that for the associates, but we also reward the leadership team. If the leader has a department where the department is giving a lot of ideas, that means the leader's doing a good job engaging and relating and challenging their team to constantly improve. So we actually have 2 suggestion annual prizes that everybody's really trying to win. And it really has helped the culture of suggestions.
I think somebody asked earlier, what does this cost you per year, and what do you estimate the savings to be?
We don't even really budget for it, because we wouldn't be approving an idea if it wasn't. And I mean, you just saw that idea right there. If that's half right, not $6,000 a year. If it's $3,000 a year, that just paid for 300 ideas, 100 ideas. So we really don't budget for it, because we know the ideas are going to be really strong ROI.
I know you have another program, City Circles. I've attended a number of these presentations with you. Can you talk a little about what City Circles are and how that gets suggestions out of employees?
Yep, no problem. So City Circles are essentially groups of 5 people that are, one's trained on problem solving, true 8-step problem solving, and they all work together 1 hour a week for 12 weeks. They pick a problem, or we present them a problem that they're saying, yeah, we'll work on that. It's a cross-functional team. Sometimes these associates have never worked with each other, and they go through the problem-solving process with the facilitator. Most of the time, the facilitator is no more than a team leader level or hourly associate, and we learn tons. So I think we get huge ROI from these problem-solving projects. We learn who's the future leaders of the department, or the future team leaders or supervisors. We share at the end of the 12 weeks, they present out their results. We were averaging about 22 teams pre-pandemic per quarter. You're talking like 110 people per quarter. And we learn tons. In my role, I learned tons about the business. And everybody shares. We eat some pizza, we have some fun, we vote on the best ones. And I think the best City Circle of the year, each member gets $1,000 each. Huge ROI, a lot of fun, a lot of development, and really helps keep that continuous improvement culture going.
Yeah, and it's awesome. I mean, so I can see how it builds the teamwork. You get suggestions, but it's also a great training opportunity for the people too, right? I mean, they're learning now getting into even more advanced ways of looking at things and understanding what a Pareto analysis is and how to do a map of a process. So speaking to other firms, as you get into this, there's a lot of ways to go beyond the way I present it and the basic techniques. I mean, this is a little more advanced. You can get into Kaizen events. There's all sorts of additional ways, and I'm just trying to kind of look at the most essential, the basic ways of getting in. So and that's an example of the report. So you can see it's pretty involved. I mean, that's some Pareto analysis. There's a little flows, and it was interesting. So not everything gets approved, although a couple of these, I guess, as you said earlier, they present some alternatives. So like, I guess here, rather than replacing the materials completely, it was approved to go with an update. But then as far as changing this DDR system, so can you talk a little bit about, what happens if you don't approve it? And
Yep.
is it okay?
Yeah, so the process is we want them to give a lot of recommendations, a lot of suggestions, a lot of ideas, and then we force them to pick the ones that are the best ones to truly solve the root cause. Maybe it's the more affordable, easier, faster, quick implementation. But usually what we say is people like to fall in love with their first idea.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you force them to think of multiple ideas and then really try to think through how are they going to get which one or which few are going to help really solve this problem? So it really helps. I know I fall in love with my first idea all the time.
Right.
Once you force the routine to go through multiple ways of how to attack this problem, you actually get way smarter. So it's a smart technique.
Yeah, and actually, you know, a lot of us entrepreneurs fall in love with our first idea too. So that's a good technique to learn for all of us, really. All right, great. So those were the first three of the four practices. Here's the final practice, which is, you know, how do you motivate employees? And we'll talk about a specific Gemba walk technique, but in general, we'll, I think, step back and say, really, you know, all the things we've talked about give you the opportunity to fully engage employees with respect and trust and motivate them if you do it in the right way. So basically, what's the lean way to motivate your employees? Coach them. You know, don't direct them and control them, coach them. So what's a Gemba walk and what is a Gemba? Well, Gemba is, and I tried to avoid the Japanese terms just to make it more understandable, but Gemba, I think, has a special kind of meaning. It really means the place of work or the place where work gets done. And so a Gemba walk is a regular kind of visit that a manager would make to, typically one-on-one, it doesn't have to be, but one-on-one with an employee at their place of work. So if you were going to do a Gemba with somebody in the warehouse, you go to the warehouse. That's where you go and see and interact with the employee. Or it could be on the sales floor. It could be a driver, you know, going out. Many times I'd go, and a lot of our people would go on ride-alongs with drivers and so forth. And the Gemba walk has two important purposes. One is it's an opportunity for managers and really anybody to observe and learn about the work as it's actually being practiced. Because it's one thing to see what the written procedure is or the written standard work, but a lot of times the way it's actually happening may not be that same way. So, and that may change. So it gives you that opportunity to go and observe and learn. But I think really the most important part of a Gemba walk is that it's the main way in which a manager does the coaching, can coach employees, and especially to build that relationship, build and strengthen the manager-employee relationship. And there's just a ton of research, and it's, I think, common sense for anybody who's been in business for some time, that the relationship between an employee and his or her direct supervisor is the most important relationship and has the most impact on that employee's motivation and engagement and, frankly, willingness to stay with the company. So so that's the Gemba walk technique. And here's basically a little bit of a how to do it again as you're getting into it. And this was a handout. It was a PDF sent out to you along with a few other documents from the webinar. So organizing a Gemba walk, if you can, you want to plan, say, a 30-minute walk at least once a week and hopefully once a day. As much as you can handle, it's worth it. Schedule and reserve time for your walk. You know, don't just walk out and you're not sure who you're going to see. So, you know, who are you going to visit? And this is very important. Think a little bit about the questions you want to ask each employee, but make them open-ended. Okay, open-ended means you're going to say, you know, how do you feel about this? How is this going for you? You know, what do you think about this new thing that we've introduced? And open-ended tends to make for a better atmosphere, and you're going to get, you know, more interesting feedback from employees. At the beginning of the walk, this is very important, remind yourself, and this is a quote from Fujio Cho, who was the actually former now chairman of Toyota, who said, you know, the way to do a walk is you go see, ask why, and show respect. So go see means you go to the place of work, go to the Gemba, you ask why. You don't tell people like, oh, you're doing this wrong, you need to change this. Rather, you ask why. Well, why is this happening this way? What could you do to improve it? And of course, there's a lot behind that. I mean, we're just touching on it, but that's the idea, and to show respect. So the way that you interact with that employee when you go out is going to make all the difference in whether or not this builds trust and respect. Because, you know, a Gemba walk, an employee can view it as, oh gosh, here comes the boss to spy on me or to yell at me or whatever. So So your manner of doing it makes a big difference. And then after the walk, take a few minutes, reflect on it. Don't just jump into something else. Reflect on what just happened, and plan any kind of follow-up action. Maybe there was a good suggestion that came out, and follow up on that. If somebody gives you a suggestion and you just drop it, they're not going to give you more suggestions after that. So that's the idea of the Gemba walk. But really, the Gemba walk and this idea of coaching is really part of this broader shift in management style. As when we began the webinar tonight, talked about the fact that the control and command style of management is really traditionally there. It's still there in many cases, but we're moving more to the partnering style, which involves more guiding and coaching, trying to engage employees and get them to learn and develop, rather than just getting them to comply with what it is we tell them to do. And this way is not working so well. This way, even though it takes new skills, is really the way of the future. And I put here low trust because this is inherently low trust. If you're telling somebody, look, just do what I tell you, I don't, that's low respect, and that leads to low trust. Versus this kind of style has the ability to start building up this higher level of trust. And I really have found that this idea of trust is absolutely critical to understanding where you stand as a culture, because that, as I'm sure you can see, lean is not just a set of techniques for what you do, it's also a culture of how you relate to each other. And one of the tools that I've had a lot of good success with, I developed this tool based on the book called The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey. That's, many of you may know Stephen Covey. This is actually Covey's son. And it's a terrific book. And it's amazing when you start thinking about trust and just how costly it is when you don't have trust. And so what you have here is a tool that you can use individually. You can use it to assess your own view of the organization, or you can have everyone fill it out, maybe in an anonymous basis. But and I won't go into the details, but you did get this as a handout PDF that you kind of rate where you stand in terms of working atmosphere, from, in the low end, very toxic open warfare, some grumbling, all the way up to high levels of engagement, personal relationships, management style, policies and procedures. So basically you kind of can rate where you stand in these different dimensions. And then there's a total scoring system that says, all right, if your total score was above 22, you're in a high trust range. And the impact, and this comes from Covey's work, which is supported by some empirical data, that's probably giving you a 20 to 40% boost in your performance as an organization. The baseline is if you're 19 to 21, all right, that's moderate, you're kind of okay. But as you start going lower, if you're below 18, you're probably losing 20 to 40% of performance because people are distracted and they're not engaged in doing the work. And on the low end, very low, you could be looking at 60 to 80% reductions in performance, which is really pretty amazing. And that really does happen too. So that's it. Those are the four lean ways of managing. As far as adopting lean management, just to kind of summarize, the big gains you're getting, you're increasing productivity, improving service, especially important, you're retaining your best people. The people issue, of course, is very big right now. And this was an excellent study, probably one of the best I've seen on why people are leaving as part of this great resignation. It showed that, a lot of people think, well, you just got to pay more. And in some cases you do, but actually the toxic culture was the top reason for leaving a job. And it was 10 times more important than the compensation in predicting people that left their jobs between April and September of last year. So I think that really shows you just how important it is to pay attention to the culture. So as far as how do you do this, again, you've had a great chance, I think, to see Andrew's view and what a mature lean organization looks like. But to get started, you don't have to hire a consultant. You can, but I've tried to set this up, and it's proven that you can do this internally. Assess what you're currently doing, your current practices. Assess your level of trust. That form is important. And you can gradually change whatever it is you need to change. Okay, and you don't have to start in any one of those 4 practices. You can start anywhere, but you have to be aware of the direction you want to go and start moving in that direction. I always say learning the lean way is like learning a new dance. You just start by learning the steps, and the steps are what I've shown in the prior webinars, and then you keep practicing. But you have to realize it does take 2 to tango, and not all people are willing and able to take the lean journey. And that means not just managers. Some managers can't adapt to it. And Andrew will tell you, he ended up having to, get many of his managers, a number of the managers, off the bus from old times, who just couldn't adapt to this new way of doing things. But also for employees too. Employees have to be willing to accept this. So,
David, you and I know how amazing this philosophy is, and how it can revolutionize your company as well as your morale, your personal morale. And if these are a lot of business leaders and organizational leaders, sometimes there's a lot of pressure on us to solve all the problems and be the smartest in the room. CFOS Lean has really helped me take a lot of pressure off my back, because the whole organization is working towards getting your company better, or your organization better. So, I would just say, I think, sharing my story, obviously, David knows how much of a zealot I am, a lean zealot on this thing, but we're really passionate. You got my email if anybody needs some help to get this journey going. I was fortunate enough to have people like David teach me it, get me my eyes open to this. And it is saved morale, business, success, you name it. And I'm a lot happier. I go home on time, see my wife and kids. And it's just a phenomenal philosophy that I hope everybody here continues to learn from.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. And we'd love to have you back on again with, perhaps another subject, your theory for success or whatever. I'll be in contact with you. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Rich and Dr. Hinds. Appreciate you guys.
thanks so much.
Take care, everybody.
All right, everybody. So basically with that, Andrew told you he's very passionate about it. I'm very passionate about it. And it not just because it's a great way to make money. I mean, that's, if you want to make money in the future, this is, as a business owner or manager, this is how you're going to have to do it. But at the same time, it actually is great for employees, for the well-being of employees, the well-being of your managers, the well-being of yourself. It's less stress. There's more satisfaction. And when you boil it down, it really improves the level of trust. It builds trust in the workplace. And for sure, we need more trust in our society. So I really view lean as a positive force in business and in society in general. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention.